Gentlemen, everyone quiet down, find your seats as quickly as possible. We're going to be showing a video here in just a second.
You good? Boy Staters. Boy Staters. All right, we have a video to show you guys.
Congratulations to everyone on being a part of Boys State. You truly are some of the very best students, and this program continues to be strong because students like you participate. By being here, you have already shown that you care about your community and your state. We want you to continue that passion as you further your education and enter the workplace. Your interest in learning about government and leadership is important, and it's important to have strong, capable leaders in key roles in both the public sector and private business. Congratulations on your accomplishments so far, and I know you will continue to excel.
Good evening, gentlemen. I've been asked to introduce our guest for this evening. The Deputy Director is a 20-year veteran of the TBI, having served as a field agent in the Criminal Investigation Division for 11 years prior to entering the management. Since that time, he served as an Assistant Special Agent in charge within the Tennessee Fusion Center for 4 years and as the Special Agent in charge of the TBI's Middle Tennessee Field Investigations Unit for 4 years. He was appointed in March 2016 as the Deputy Director, where he assists the TBI Director in overseeing the operations of the TBI's 7 divisions, which include the Criminal Investigation Division, the Drug Investigation Division, the Forensic Services Division, the Administrative Services Division, the Information Systems Division, the Criminal Justice Information Services Division, and the Training Division. Prior to joining the TBI, Deputy Director Locke served 3 years as a patrol officer and 6 years as a detective with the local law enforcement in Tennessee. He is a graduate of the FBI National Academy and holds a bachelor degree in criminal justice from Middle Tennessee State University and a master's degree in professional studies and strategic leadership from Tennessee State University. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Deputy Director Jason Locke.
Thank you so much, and it's my pleasure to be here. First off, I would say congratulations to each one of you for a job well done in getting to just be a part of this fine organization. You know, the state and our nation as a whole really needs good leadership, and good leadership on the local level, the state level, and the federal level. And it all starts with raising leaders within our own communities. So congratulations to each one of you, and thank you again for having me here to speak for a few minutes to you tonight. Let me just start off with, how many are out there maybe that has never heard of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation? Any hands out there? Few hands out there. Just to kind of go over and give a little brief history about who we are and what we're all about. We are a state law enforcement agency, and we were created back in the 1950s by the Tennessee legislature. And basically what led to our creation was there was a very violent homicide case up in rural Upper East Tennessee. And how many out there are familiar with the Andy Griffith Show? People watch Andy, everybody knows Andy Griffith. Well, imagine just a really violent, brutal homicide case that would have happened in Mayberry, and the only law enforcement that you had there maybe was Barney. Maybe Andy was even gone on vacation. And so this is kind of what we were looking at in the early 1950s in this area. and the local newspaper was on the scene there, and the newspaper editor had even noticed that the police officer was walking back and forth in front of this window where the suspect had actually fired a shotgun through the window, killing the victim that was inside the home there. And the reporter had noticed that the officer was just going back and forth, and what he was actually doing was covering up all the footprints that was left outside of the window there by the suspect, and several things like that. And so that newspaper reporter had some political connections, and he really started lobbying the state legislature and said, we really need a law enforcement organization within the state that is very much like the FBI, that can come in and help rural law enforcement with very complicated or high-level cases. And thus, that is what led to the TBI being formed. And really, the main difference between the TBI and the FBI is that the TBI is charged with working violations of state law, whereas the FBI works violations of federal law. So a violation of a federal law would be like a bank robbery, for example, since banks are controlled by the federal government. A violation of state law would be murder, rape, robbery, arson, things like that that are codified under the Tennessee laws as being crimes in Tennessee. So that's basically how we got our start. And originally we were part of the Tennessee Highway Patrol. Anybody heard of the Highway Patrol, the state troopers? We were part of that same agency there, and the head of that agency is the Commissioner of Safety. And the Commissioner of Safety is appointed by the governor. So every time we get a new governor that comes in, the governor gets to choose his cabinet level positions, and the governor chooses the Commissioner of Safety. And we worked under that system as part of the Department of Safety for several years, from the 50s up until about 1980. And what had happened that changed all of that is we had a very serious incident within our own state government. It was a sad day for Tennessee government, as we had a governor within the state who was committing some serious legal violations. He was selling pardons. The governor has the authority to issue a pardon. So if someone is in prison, the governor has the authority to actually sign a pardon and let that person out of prison and relieve him from his convictions of his crimes. And so that's a vast amount of power that a governor has, and this particular governor that was in office in the late 70s was taking money from people in exchange for signing those pardons over and letting people out of prison. And these were serious inmates. Several of them had been convicted of murder even. And so we had a governor letting murderers back out on the street. And the TBI began an investigation of that governor in cooperation with the FBI. It was a joint investigation. And as we got to the latter portion of that investigation, the sitting governor that was about to be arrested found out about it. And so he picked up the phone and he called the Commissioner of Safety, again, who he appoints. The Commissioner of Safety works for him, and he said, I want to see that case file that y'all have on me. I need that delivered to my office immediately. And of course, the governor is the commissioner's boss, and he said, yes, sir, and ends up delivering the file. And so what happened was, fortunately for law enforcement, we already had our case made during that time, and we were able to arrest that governor, who eventually went to prison. But at that point, the legislators saw a need to separate the TBI out from the rest of state government and make us an independent agency to take that political control out from over us and allow us to do the work that we do without fear of repercussion or political influence or political corruption and things like that. So since 1980, we have been a separate entity, separate and apart from the rest of state government, and that has allowed us to continue to be very effective in what we do. The main thing that we do at the Bureau, obviously what we're known most for is our criminal investigations. We do a variety of criminal investigations across the state, and we work hand in hand with the local district attorney's offices and interact with them frequently on a daily basis. They actually issue written requests to us on a regular basis to conduct several types of different investigations. And those investigations range from anything from violent homicides to white-collar crimes to public corruption and misconduct. We at times have to do things that are not pleasurable, such as investigate high-powered, high-ranking law enforcement officials, such as sheriffs and chiefs of police and things of that nature. And if you follow the local news, you'll see that we just recently arrested a sheriff not too far from here in this county here, not too far away in a neighboring county. So those things happen from time to time. And I would say that you know, we feel like that within the law enforcement community, the TBI is called to be leaders within that community. And leadership is very important to us, and that's why speaking to each one of you is such a pleasure to me tonight, because I know each one of you are already leaders where you're at now, and your leadership capabilities and development is just going to continue to grow and grow. So, you know, what's important for us at the TBI is that to keep our leadership and our status as law enforcement leaders in the state, you can't falter. You can't make ethical mistakes. You can't make moral mistakes. You have to always do the right thing. You can't be called to go in and investigate a public official who may be doing something wrong and potentially look the other way because you've known him for 10 or 20 years and he's your friend. You have to be able to put your job and your position first and always do the right thing in those matters. Although TBI stands for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, we also say that it stands for truth, bravery, and integrity. And integrity is one of our foremost assets that we have, and something that we can never deviate from. So it's very important that we hold fast to those values and those value systems. That's the things that we look for within people that we hire at the TBI, is people that have high moral and ethical standards, who do not bend easily and who are not easily compromised in tough situations, because sometimes you have to make tough situations in life, hard situations, things that are not easy. But you know, that's what leaders are called to do. Leaders are, if it were you know, all you had to ever do was make easy decisions, anybody could do that. It's those that can stand up and make the tough decisions that count and do the right thing. Those are the true leaders that we look for within our agency. So like I said, we investigate various types of crimes, those high-level violent crimes, white-collar crimes. We also investigate a lot of drug activity within the state. I don't think that there's any family within the state of Tennessee that drug abuse has not hit in some form or fashion. You know, whether it be a brother or sister, cousin, aunt or uncle, I'm sure that everyone in here could raise their hand because if I asked if you know someone or you have someone close that has experienced a problem with drugs. And so that is something that we put to the forefront. At the TBI, we investigate mid to high-level drug trafficking and track cases from drug cartels coming from as far away as Mexico and overseas. So that is big on things that we focus on as far as the drug activity, the violent crime activity, and public corruption within the state. In addition to that, we do a lot of technical type crimes. We have a lot of technical assets and technical operations that we use. We do computer forensics, cell phone forensics, those things. There's in today's day and time, in the modern age of technology, there's hardly any case that doesn't involve some type of technology within that investigation. So we do cell phone tracking, computer intrusion tracking. We do computer forensics where we examine devices to look for things that are of a legal nature on the devices themselves, as well as doing wiretaps and things of that nature. We also run the state's crime laboratory. Anybody watch CSI on TV? Everybody knows a lot about forensic science these days. The TBI holds the state crime lab. We have 3 crime laboratories across the state, one in Memphis, one in Nashville, and one in Knoxville. And we service practically 99% of all law enforcement cases. So if the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office or the Putnam County Sheriff's Office or the Cookeville PD gathers evidence in a criminal case, they bring it to one of our crime labs, and our forensic scientists within the TBI crime lab processes that evidence, issues reports back to them, and then the forensic scientists themselves will go and testify in court if the case actually goes to trial and things like that. Those are some of the things that we do, but I know this is a big group and we probably have a lot of questions out there, and I want to offer some time up for a question and answer session. So I'll start that right away, and we'll go from there. I'll let y'all have a little time to talk and ask questions.
All right, so gentlemen, we'll do it the same way that we've done it before. We got our microphones coming down, and you can line up in the aisle. Okay, that's fine. All right, hold it down. Hold it down.
Thank you for being here, sir. I was just wondering, what was one of the most memorable cases or investigations that you ever conducted in your career?
You know, there's been so many, and my career as far as being out in the field and doing investigative work was mainly focused on homicide and violent crime. I worked homicide for 17 years. Aside from the violent crime and homicide, one of the most memorable cases probably was the very first case that I worked as a TBI agent. I had been a detective for a number of years before coming on to the TBI, and again, my detective time was centered on violent crime, and I never worked a lot of white-collar crime. And so the first case that I got was a white-collar type crime where the owner of a hospital who had a master's degree from Harvard University was actually embezzling money from the hospital. And so that was a new case that I had never really been exposed to, something that intricate and that detailed, where you had to really get down in the weeds as far as going through books and tracking financial trails and things like that. That was something very new to me at that time, and you know, just a little overwhelming to kind of get started with when you were dealing with something of that magnitude and that kind of complicated, and the person that you were looking at was obviously very smart if he had been to Harvard University and graduated from Harvard. So that was very interesting to me, very rewarding. We were actually able to make that case and to make an arrest on that case, and it resulted in a conviction. So that was one that just kind of sticks out in my mind. The biggest thing for me, especially working violent crime, is that they all really kind of stay with you for your entire career. And the biggest part of that is being able to actually solve the case and bring some closure to that family, especially if they've lost a loved one, if it's a homicide case. Because there are so many people out there that have lost someone, and they just have lost everything, especially if it's a parent and they've lost their child. You can never do anything to bring that child back, but if you can bring some sort of justice into all of that mix and give that family just a little bit of relief in knowing that justice has been served, that stays with me forever.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Aaron, and I would like to thank you for coming out tonight. My question is, what would you have to help a person trying to go on the path to get to like somewhere in TBI or TBI and then, or FBI?
Absolutely, that's a great question. You know that there is a big demand for good quality candidates, and we really pour over the candidates that come into the TBI. We last year we advertised in the fall for 13 vacant agent positions, and we had 1,500 people apply for 13 positions. And so there's a lot of competition out there, so you have to do things to set yourself apart. Number one, at the stage that you're at now, you need to make sure that you stay on a good straight path and always doing the right thing, keeping your integrity up. Obviously, we look at grades. Especially your college grades while you're in college. You have to have a 4-year college degree to come to work for us or the FBI, either one. So you need to stay on the right track as far as your grades go in college. Work hard there, and then just do things that set yourself apart. Both us and the FBI, we don't demand a specific type of 4-year degree because we look for diversity within the TBI. We hire people that have criminal justice degrees from their college, but we also hire people that major in Spanish, because obviously the ability to speak Spanish is a very big asset right now, especially within the state of Tennessee. We hire people that major in accounting because when you talk about that last case that I talked about there where you're tracking numbers and things like that. So we need people with abilities there. We hire a lot of people that are out of the military after they've gotten their degree and served time in the military. So that's always something that could play a factor in. And we always encourage people, especially if they're right out of college, maybe to try to get out and get some experience at a local law enforcement arena, at a local police department or sheriff's department, because as you just build your experience and things like that, that's just going to give you an edge on anybody else that is applying, maybe that don't have those experiences and things like that to go for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I was wondering if you would mind speaking about your role in the mitigation and aftermath of the Chattanooga attack a few years ago, and as well as working with the FBI on that case.
Yes. We do a lot of response to terrorism and homegrown terrorism within the state. The TBI houses what's called the Tennessee Fusion Center, and that is housed within our headquarters there in Nashville. And the Fusion Center is basically a hub of law enforcement information. We get police reports, offense reports, arrest reports, things like that from virtually every police department in the state. And all of those come into a main computer database that we collect there. And so we're constantly monitoring those things for trends and activity, because what may be going on in Chattanooga, the Chattanooga Police Department may not communicate regularly with the Nashville Police Department, who may not communicate regularly with the Memphis Police Department. And so because we're able to house all of that information in at one place and analyze that, that helps us see trends and things like that as they develop. Within that Fusion Center, we have assigned personnel from the FBI, from the United States Department of Homeland Security, as well as other state agencies, the Department of Corrections. We do a lot of interaction with the prison systems within Tennessee, because there's gangs within those prison systems who still try to operate activities from within the prison, but those activities are going on outside of the prison. And so that's some of the things that we're involved in on a daily basis within the TBI. Obviously, when we have an attack like that or an event like that, we're going to immediately respond and offer assistance along those lines. If it is deemed to be a terroristic attack, that goes back to a violation of federal law. So the FBI normally would take the lead on that, but we would be working hand in hand with them, offering whatever resources and support. We work very well with the FBI, as well as we do with all of our federal partners, almost on a daily basis. If there is a big arson case or an explosion case, or a big weapons case, we will work very closely with the ATF along those lines. And so it's very seamless type thing. There's a lot of task forces that are put together where each agency will put people on that task force. And so that task force may have FBI agents on it, TBI agents on it, detectives from the local police department, detectives from local sheriff's departments. And when you have that task force concept, then that immediately develops relationships within that task force. But when something big like that happens, you have such a wealth of resources, because everybody on that task force can then in turn call their own departments and say, hey, we need more help down here, and you're able to specifically call for the things that you need.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, like, how many TBI labs you have in the state of Tennessee and where they're located.
Okay. We have 3 labs across the state. We have a lab that is in Memphis. Our main crime lab is in Nashville, and we have one in Knoxville. And so those are all staffed by forensic scientists there at each of our regional offices. We actually have, TBI has regional offices in multiple cities across the state. Starting in Memphis, we have an office there in Jackson, then Nashville. We have one here in Cookeville, Chattanooga, Knoxville, and Johnson City. And then we have satellite smaller offices all across the state.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
I just wanted to thank you for coming out today and for everything you do for our state. I was just wondering what a typical day is like for a TBI special agent.
You know, that's the thing about being a special agent, and it's just depending on where unit you're assigned in as to what you do on a daily basis. You know, personally, I came up as a field agent, which means I was assigned out into some of those rural counties. So I didn't report to the headquarters office every day. I basically had my own office. It was just me, really. And so I spent my time interacting with the local police department, sheriff's department, and working on whatever cases that I happen to have at any given time. And so you have to be able to prioritize those cases as they come in, because they don't just come in one at a time, and they don't wait till you get that one solved before they give you another one. You know, so you can be very busy at times. There's been times that I was working in the field that I might have had 3 different murder cases going on at the same time, and those are hard to keep up with. And you have to really prioritize those leads and figure out which ones are going to be the most fruitful, and try to get those gone and knocked out first. So that's some of the things that the field agents do. Our other agents, like our technical services agents, they're going to come into headquarters every day. They do things like either computer forensics or computer analytics. They also, we have a unit that goes online. They're online looking for people that are breaking laws via the web. And so they're looking for child predators, they're looking for computer hackers, things of that nature. And so they spend a lot of their time just behind the computer all day long trying to develop trends and things like that, and see what they can look into and establish cases that way.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
might try and come work for you someday.
Very good. We'd love to have you.
Hello, sir. I too want to thank you for coming and speaking to us tonight. My question is, what kind of quality career positions exist at the TBI other than just being a field agent?
Very good. Well, obviously we have our field agents. We have drug agents that work narcotics investigations. We have agents assigned to the Medicaid fraud unit, and those agents investigate violations of Medicaid, which is government-sponsored health care. And fraudulent activities along those lines. You know, in any profession, there's always going to be people that don't do the right thing and they don't do what they're supposed to do. You know, I talked to you earlier about, so there's times that we have to arrest a sheriff or a chief of police or things like that. But that spans any you know, profession. There's always going to be preachers that don't do exactly what they're supposed to do. There's going to be doctors that don't do what they're supposed to do. And the Medicaid Fraud Unit, that's one of the things that they do, is they investigate doctors that try to abuse the federal healthcare system by overcharging and overcollecting more money than they're entitled to. So that's one thing that they look at. So we have those areas there. We have our forensic scientists that work within the crime lab. So you see some of that kind of stuff that you see on CSI. We have our scientists that do that. And we have just a wide array of other things like our technical services unit. We have an aviation unit. We have bureau aircraft. So we have pilots that work for us, that fly our aircraft for us. And do surveillance in that form. So we do transport missions with our aircraft, transporting agents across the state or across multiple states sometimes, because there may be witnesses to crimes within Tennessee and those witnesses lived in Ohio or whatnot. So we may have to fly agents out there to do those interviews and talk to people out there. We have obviously our support services within the agency, our computer support services, not just computer investigations, but all of our computer systems that we use. When a police officer is on the street, say here in Cookeville, and he gets behind a car and it's a suspicious vehicle and it has Nevada license plates on it. Well, obviously the Cookeville Police Department doesn't have access to Nevada license plate information. They have to have a way to get that. And so that officer will get on his radio and radio into the Cookeville dispatcher that Nevada license plate number, and that dispatcher is on a mainframe computer system that is linked in with us at TBI headquarters in Nashville, and we are linked out to every state in the nation. So when that officer on the street runs that Nevada tag, it goes through his dispatch here in Cookeville to us, then we're able to go straight to Nevada, get that tag information, comes back to us, back to Cookeville, all in a millisecond, just fractions of a second. So those type of support systems, you know, there's just a variety of things and opportunities there within the agency. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. So through the use of GPUs and ASICs, people, individuals and groups can mine for things such as cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and knowing that they are highly difficult to trace and or track, how have the efforts of TBI been able in tracking such currencies and their uses in things such as drug trafficking and weapons? And whenever you do confiscate a computer or technical device with some type of cryptocurrency on it, what do you guys do with it?
That's a fantastic question. Our technical services unit, sometimes we refer to those guys in that unit as the RSGs, and that stands for really smart guys, because they're a lot smarter than me and just the average person that works at the TBI. They are super proficient at what they do, and we send them to specialized schools to even enhance their proficiency in those areas. Probably as an agent going into our technical services unit, that is the most expensive agent that we develop, that we spend more money developing those personnel because of the cost of the schools that we send them to be able to do exactly what you're talking about is astronomical. But to answer your question, we do develop cases dealing with Bitcoin and drug trade and things like that. That's one of those things that I really can't go into a whole lot of detail because we try to keep those things under the table so that people don't understand how we solve the crimes that we solve. But again, we are very active in tracking those type of cases and developing cases that way. But those are some of the more challenging cases that we work, are those online things and trying to break into devices and things like that. We have one of our supervisors within the agency that actually has testified in front of the National Congress as far as Apple and their encryption and the efforts law enforcement is doing to be able to force Apple to allow us to bypass that encryption, because there's so much activity that we can't get around some of that encryption sometimes. And so we're very active in developing ways to do that. Obviously, there was a big case of a couple of years ago, or it may not even be quite that long, where they were trying to break into a phone. They couldn't get broken into that phone, and then they had a private company come in and offer their services to the FBI, and was able to actually get into that phone and get some information. Now, we're not sure what that company charged the FBI to do that, but I'm told that it's upwards of above $1 million is what they paid to have that done. And so that technology obviously is technology-driven crime is very prevalent. It is very hard to solve. It's very time-consuming to solve, and it takes a lot of resources, including monetary resources, to get those things done.
Thanks, sir.
I would like to ask about if the TBI goes with undercover, and
Yes.
if undercover investigations, how is that done, and also what areas of investigation is that primarily used in the TBI?
Yes. We do undercover investigations quite often, especially within our drug division. We are also probably the lead agency in the state as far as murder for hire investigations. If someone is trying to pay someone else to have someone killed, normally when that makes its way to local law enforcement, they will call us. We have been in that business for many years. Long before I ever came on the Bureau, we were doing those type cases. So we will try to find a way to introduce our own agents in as the quote-unquote hit man that is trying to be purchased to go have someone killed. So we do that type of undercover activity, as well as the basic narcotics undercover drug work as well. We offer a lot of training in undercover, and we have continued to enhance our training in those areas.
Hello, I was wondering if the Sheriff's Department you was talking about earlier was Fentress County Sheriff's Department, and if so, is that still under investigation? Because I've heard that it isn't over.
Well, that's a good question. Yes, that's a public knowledge, and was in all the newspaper. The last sheriff that we arrested was the Fentress County Sheriff. That case is still active and ongoing. Obviously, I can't discuss the details of an active and open case, but yes, that is the last sheriff that we did arrest. I guess the sheriff before that was the Rutherford County Sheriff, who just recently pled guilty in federal court. That's one of the cases that we were involved in that actually went and was prosecuted in the federal court in Nashville. And he is awaiting sentencing, but he will be ended up going to prison at some point. And again, that just goes to show you the different levels, because you have Fentress County, which is a very rural, small town, small department, and then you have the Rutherford County Sheriff that I think is about the third or fourth largest jail in the state. So,
thanks so much.
yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, what kind of steered you toward this career, and what you find most rewarding about this career?
What steered me toward the career, I think in high school I started thinking that this is what I wanted to do. I guess there's a lot of guys that I guess when they're little boys, they play cops and robbers and things like that. And I think from a very young age, there's a lot of people or a lot of men especially, that think, well, I want to be a policeman when I grow up one day. But as I got into high school and started to think, well, hey, it's about time to go to college and I've got to make a career path and a career choice. Going into criminal investigations was what I really wanted to do. That's what I wanted to focus on. So I went to Middle Tennessee State University, majored in criminal justice there. And so that's kind of what got me on that path. When I was a junior in college, I got a very rare opportunity to get a law enforcement job at a very young age as a patrol officer in a very small town, and that kind of goes back to kind of getting some experience, and that may be starting a little quicker than most people do, but by the time that I graduated college, I already had a couple of years of experience and had been through the police academy. So at the point that I got my degree, I was already very marketable and wasn't just coming out of college with no work experience at all. And as far as the satisfaction goes, again, it goes back to what I talked about earlier, being able to solve a crime, no matter what type of crime it was, whether it's violent crime or any type of crime, but to bring someone to justice by using the things that you have learned, the skills that you have developed, and just helping people. Whether they're a victim of a burglary and you've gotten some of their property back for them, or they're a victim of violent crime and you're able to bring some closure and peace to them. That's one of the biggest rewarding things as far as coming up through my career. At the point that I stopped doing investigations and went into management, then the reward, at that point it becomes more about the mission and the agency and helping the agency fulfill its mission by helping people that are doing what you used to do and empowering them and giving them the tools that you know that they need to be able to be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. Thank you for coming out here, and more so, thank you for what you do for the state of Tennessee.
Thank you.
I kind of have a loaded question. I just read two statistics where Tennessee is both the second in the nation on opiates abuse, and on the Tennessee government website, they said that there's over 800 methamphetamine labs in the state of Tennessee at any given time. My question is, will we ever see a time where the governor's task force on marijuana eradication, those resources better allocated towards more pressing matters such as methamphetamine labs or these opiate abusers?
That's a good question, and yes, we are ranked way up there. I think we're just behind Ohio, who is #1 in opioid abuse. There is actually, we have a marijuana task force that focuses on marijuana, but we also have a dangerous drugs task force. And we have a special agent in charge that oversees that dangerous drugs task force, and that is housed out of Chattanooga there. So we have a separate entity already in place to not only try to fight the opioid epidemic, but as well we do research and analytics on that also. As far as the amount of meth labs in the state, the amount of meth labs within Tennessee has dropped drastically. Now, that's not to say that meth usage has dropped. Meth usage is at an all-time high. But because of some of the things that the TBI has helped push through the legislature as far as making it harder to get the ingredients used to make meth, we have seen, I don't want to say eliminated, but we have seen meth labs nearing elimination within the state. Now, what has happened is the Mexican drug cartels south of the border into Mexico see this and understand this, so meth production in Mexico is at an all-time high, and they are shipping their product into the state that way. So although meth labs are down, meth usage is up because meth is still out there, and heroin now is probably one of the biggest problems that we're seeing within the state is heroin, and not only heroin, but heroin laced with some other drugs called fentanyl and carfentanil, which is, fentanyl is an analog that comes from China mainly, and just a couple of granules like a couple of grains of salt, it could be lethal in humans. And we find that they're adding this into their heroin to make it more potent and more powerful. And so that is one thing that we're having to equip our drug agents with, is actually an antidote in case they accidentally run up on any of this, because it can be absorbed through the skin. And we've had a couple of instances. There was one instance in Ohio, as a matter of fact, just a couple of weeks ago, where an officer noticed some powder on his shirt after making a traffic stop. He went to brush the powder off, and it absorbed in the back of his hand, and they had to give him about 6 doses of that
Narcan.
Yes, of the Narcan. That's very good. To get him revived and stabilized before they could get him to the hospital there. So that's some of the challenges that we face. It's an ongoing battle, and we're putting every effort that we can into winning that battle.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. You said earlier that the TBI is now an independent agency due to the situation with the former Tennessee governor back in 1980.
Yes.
So in regards to checks and balances, who is it that, for lack of a better term, checks the FBI, or the TBI, I'm sorry?
Okay, that's a great question right there. So what happens is that every 6 years, the TBI director is appointed by the governor, just like he appoints his cabinet member, but it's a special process. When the governor appoints a cabinet member, he can just pick anybody that he wants to pick. When it's time for the TBI director to be chosen, there is a panel that's formed, and the Speaker of the House gets to choose 2 people, and they have to be bipartisan. They have to be a Democrat and a Republican. The Speaker of the Senate gets to choose 2 people, and the executive director of the District Attorney's Conference sits on that panel. So you have a 5-person panel, and anyone can apply to be the director of the TBI. That panel interviews those applicants, and then they choose 3 of their top names are chosen from the applicants. Those 3 names are submitted to the governor, and the governor chooses from those 3 names who's going to be the director of the TBI. That term is a set 6-year fixed term, and the director cannot be fired by the governor at that point. The only way the director can be removed is by impeachment of the Senate, and that is only as a result of criminal wrongdoing. So we have oversight, but again, it has to be due to criminal activity on the part of the director, and it's due to an impeachment process there. And if you follow politics very closely, you'll see that President Trump just fired the director of the FBI very recently, and I don't know that I've ever even seen or heard of the director of the FBI ever being fired like that. The director of the FBI serves a 10-year term. Obviously, it's a fixed term, but obviously he can be fired, and so that obviously has been very controversial in the media, because the director of the FBI and the FBI themselves were looking into some allegations that might have gone maybe against the White House, so to speak, and so that's the type of potential political influence that our state legislature was looking at trying to avoid when they designed the system that we have. So I think it's a very good system, and again, it goes back to the integrity of the TBI is our foremost asset, and the thing that we put above everything else. We have to always do the right thing, because the public looks to us to do the right thing, and that's the culture that we really grow from the day one that any employee comes into the Bureau, whether they're an agent or whether they're a support person or support staff. We kind of jokingly tell them the #1 rule at the TBI is don't do anything to embarrass the TBI, and if you follow that rule, you'll have a long and fruitful career. Thank you.
Hi, my question is actually related a little bit to your previous answer. Those 3 qualities that you mentioned earlier, truth, bravery, and integrity, those are very important to me as an Eagle Scout. So I was just curious, with your position as the deputy director of the TBI and your knowledge of government ethics, does it trouble you that a sitting president would request loyalty from an FBI director looking into his campaign and then subsequently fire that same FBI director?
Well, I think the allegations are troubling more than anything else. As with any scenario and situation, the first thing that I would say if someone asked me my opinion about all of that is that before forming an opinion, I have to know all the facts in that scenario. And obviously, I don't know the facts. The only facts that I know are the facts that have been put out through the news media. And I can tell you through my career, I have seen the news media get it right several times, and I've seen the news media get it terribly wrong several times. And so until I think in this specific situation, until Congress has some hearings and gets some testimony and figures out exactly what the truth is, it's hard, I guess, for me in my position, and you asked me, my position, and based on my knowledge, it would be hard for me to make a steadfast judgment without having all of those facts first in hand and knowing what the real truth was.
Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
I was wondering how difficult the training or preparation is for becoming a detective, and also how intense the selection process is.
Very good. So do you mean, let me clarify, do you mean a detective with a local police agency?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Most of the time, and that was typical in my career, I served as a uniform patrol officer for about 3 years before I applied for and was promoted to detective. Most of the time, that's always going to be the case. You're going to have some experience on the road. And probably your best asset is to make good, solid cases on the road. I know as a detective, before coming on the TBI, I served as a detective for 4 years, and then a sergeant within the same detective division for another 2 years before I came to work for the state. And so I was a part of looking for detectives that we actually hired into that division there. And one of the things that I looked for was how well of reports that the officer would write, because obviously being an investigator, you've got to be able to tell a story and write good reports and be methodical about what you do. I look for officers that made good cases and a lot of cases that were excited and liked coming to work every day and liked doing their job. So that's really the foundation there. And then in today's world, education is everything. Back in my time when I was coming up as an officer, especially early on when I first started, it was very rare that you would have officers that were in college or had college degrees. Now it's kind of the norm. And so you have to do everything you can to set yourself apart and to set yourself above all the other competition there.
My question is, I was wondering, what is the hardest thing you've experienced during your career path and during any stage, be it as a policeman or during your TBI career?
Probably the hardest thing that I've experienced during my path was crimes against children, especially violent crime against children, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, or even homicides, especially homicides probably within children. And so, especially as a father myself to 2 children, and you have to be able to get past that, all the pain and hurt that might bring you. I think that investigators, especially investigators of violent crime, you have to have a gift to be able to set yourself aside from those feelings and to be able to go forward and do your job and not let it affect you. But at the same time, if it is affecting you, you need to be able to recognize that. And I have that talk with a lot of our new agents that come on. that, you know, there's going to be times where they see some hard things and some troubling things. And I think that's true with any law enforcement career, whether you're a violent crime investigator or you're just a traffic officer and you happen to work a traffic fatality wreck and see, you know, something like that. Those type things can affect you, and so you have to be able to recognize that and also recognize that if you need to sit down and talk to someone about that doesn't make you any less of a person. It makes you a smart person is what it makes you, because it helps you to deal with those scenarios and deal with those things so that you can continue doing the things that you're doing and protecting and serving other people.
Okay. As far as you know, do any of the TBI offices offer internships, or is that like not a thing?
Oh no, we have a huge intern program from a college standpoint. We, as a matter of fact, on Monday this week, we welcomed in about 25 interns to headquarters in Nashville. Most of those interns have some type of relationship to the state of Tennessee. Now, they're not all going to colleges within the state, but they're either from Tennessee or they're attending colleges within Tennessee. But we have people from colleges in California that's currently here because they're born and raised in Brentwood or wherever they're from within the state. And then we have people from all over colleges within the state. I know there were some that were from universities in Mississippi, Arkansas. I know there's one from New York, but again, all of them have some type of interaction with the state there. But we have a very big intern program. It is, again, another one of those things that's highly competitive. And so you need to be able to set yourself apart, you know, when you apply for that. And as well, you have to go through a background check to be able to come in and do that internship within our building there. Thank you.
All right, so considering your high-ranking position, would you ever feel as if you're a target or any threat to your personal or family life?
You know, currently, I don't feel that way. There were times when I was doing investigations and actually locking people up and sending them to prison that at times that crossed my mind, but then more so, I go back to, you know, some of those people that may have been convicted of second-degree murder and got a 25-year sentence. Well, I've been policing longer than 25 years now, so those people are starting to flatten their sentence and get out. Yeah. But, you know, I've never really felt a direct threat as far as that. You know, we just kind of go in and do our job and do what we have to do. And you know, if there is a threat out there or someone that may be unstable or might seek revenge, usually you have a good idea of that, and we're able to deal with that on the front end before anything happens. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
First off, I would like to thank you for coming down here and taking your time to answer these questions for us.
Sure, thank you.
I want to ask you, considering that marijuana is Tennessee's #1 cash crop, as it has been for a number of years, and also considering the millions of dollars spent on its eradication, would you classify the war on marijuana in the state of Tennessee a success or a failure?
Oh, that's a great question right there. You know, we will never arrest our way out of any drug problem, whether it's marijuana, the opioid epidemic. You cannot arrest your way out of that problem. The solution to that is through a combination of education, cooperation, and enforcement. And you have to have all of those pieces together because, you know, not only, you know, when we're fighting the war on drugs, whether it's marijuana or opiates or whatever, you know, heroin and those type things, it's not only the cost of enforcement measures that we're dealing with, but the cost of our health care measures, people that are overdosing, people that we're having to become hospitalized, seek treatment, people that are having to go through rehab processes and rehabilitation. And so the cost just continues to grow when you focus all of that in. And I think that the longer that we study and learn, the more successful that we're becoming, especially through partnerships. I know the TBI has a very good partnership with the State Department of Health and also the State Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. And so we try to collaborate routinely and see what each of the other is doing, because it's easy for us from an enforcement standpoint to just focus on enforcement. And it's easy for mental health and substance abuse services to just simply focus on treatment. But when we start overlapping and sharing information and sharing knowledge, I think that really helps us gain a stronger foothold into where we're going and what we're trying to accomplish.
How effective do you think the use of behavioral science is in solving a case?
I think it can be very effective. We have trained some people, some of our agents, in behavioral science in the past, and we have used those resources that come from the FBI. They have a behavioral sciences unit there at the FBI Academy in Virginia. And so we collaborate them a lot of times on specific type crimes and cases. I know that most everyone here, I'm sure, is, if you follow any type of crime in Tennessee, you've heard of the Holly Bobo case. We use behavioral science in that case to try to get a profile and suspect development in that case very early on. And so we use that from time to time in those aspects, as well as in researching maybe false reports or false homicide claims, where we have people analyze 911 calls, so to speak, and the verbiage and things used in those 911 calls to see if that verbiage is constructed and made up, or if it's actually free-flowing and accurate information coming firsthand.
This is the last question.
Thank you. With regards to your story earlier about an agent being in Ohio and getting affected by substances, when does your jurisdiction end as a TBI agent, and when does the FBI or DEA take control over an operation?
Again, it depends on the type of crime that we're looking for, and what route that we want to take from a prosecution standpoint. And so we look at, because a lot of times there are overlapping laws. There may be a federal law that applies to a specific situation and a state law that applies to a specific situation. And so many times we look to see, you know, which is going to be the best route to take in state court or federal court. And if it's a state court, then usually we will take the lead in the investigation. If federal court and the federal option is a stronger law or more easier prosecutable case, then the FBI would take the lead on that, and we would come with the support role there. So, you know, here's a good example. We worked a crime in very close to here in Wilson County, just a couple of counties over, a few years ago, where a guy had actually planted a homemade bomb in a residence, and 2 people ended up dying. So you have an explosive device which would actually bring in the jurisdiction of the ATF and implement federal law. But you also have a murder, which is a state crime, and bring in and deal with state law. And because the murder was the better case, and we actually collaborated on that and worked together, and we had you know, the ATF, we had us there, the FBI was there as well, we had the local district attorney, we had the local United States attorney from Nashville that was all there and collaborating in the command post area, and in the end, with all the collaboration, everyone decided that the best scenario was to prosecute that in state court, and so that's the route we did, and that person ended up getting life in prison and convicted in state court.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Deputy Director, on behalf of Boise State, I would like, and the American Legion, we'd certainly like to thank you for your time. Thank you for being here today. I know that this was by far one of the most elucidating and informative sessions that I've been a part of in quite some time. So let's give him one more round of applause. If we could get a picture together. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Deputy Director. It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you.